What? Okay, sit here. You got your bell? Okay. Fantastic. Great. Good afternoon and welcome to the Hustings for the Easter 2013 Union elections. There are 6 different positions up for election today. Positions on the Supplementary Committee, the Social Events Officer for Lent, that is for Michaelmas, next Michaelmas. Then for Lent 2014, there is the Social Events Officer, the Treasurer, the Speaker's Officer, the Executive Officer, and of course, the Presidency. We're going to go in the order I just articulated, those officers. So we'll begin with candidates for Supplementary Committee. Each candidate will speak for 1 minute and will answer one question from the floor, if of course there is one. Okay, so without further ado, please can we have our first candidate for Supplementary Committee, Simran Basuto.
Hi guys, my name is Simran, and I am a first-year natural scientist at Pembroke College. I'll keep this brief. I was a member of the union. Actually, I became a member of the union on the day I got my A-level results. It's one of the things I really looked forward to when I was coming to Cambridge. It was something like, this big, impressive debating society, famous probably throughout the world, and it's something I really looked forward to. And I must say that over the whole entire year, I've spent more and more of my time at the union, and it really has delivered. I really enjoy coming to all the debates, and I come to a lot of the speaker events, and now I just hang out in the bar a lot. And I think that at this point I want to get involved because I think the more I can put into the union, the more I'm going to get out of it. I think it's the same for any society, and this is really something I'd like to get involved with, so please vote for me.
I'm afraid you have to answer a question, if of course there is one. Do we have any questions for Simran? Ben.
Thank you. What is your favourite sort of event activity at the union? What's your favourite night, as it were?
Favourite night? Oof. I think it depends. It's hard to pick a favourite. I mean, there's loads of different stuff that goes on. So, for example, we had the really big religion debate last term, which was just really cool because of the buzz in here. The atmosphere was the building was packed out, and it was really exciting, and it was a big night. That was cool. But then also you get other things which are just exciting in a different way. So I've seen some interesting speakers over the year who the topics that have come up I wouldn't have thought of myself, or I wouldn't have known anything about it, but I came along because I wasn't up to much, and I thought, it could be interesting, and that's really satisfying as well when you come away, from a thought-provoking event, which maybe doesn't have much attendance, but it's still really worthwhile.
Thank you, Simran. And now we have our next candidate for Supplementary Committee, Alexander Duncan.
Hi, my name's Alex Duncan. I'd like to run for Supplementary Committee, and I'd love to stand here and tell you 100 reasons why you should vote for me, why I'm better than everyone. But I just don't have a list like that. Because everyone standing today cares about the union. Everyone standing today will do a good job. And, I'd like you to vote for me. But what I'd rather you did was sit down, read the manifestos, have a look at what everyone running for every position does. And you'll find people who you think will do better, you'll find people who you think will do worse. And I hope while you're looking at all the really important things like president, you take a little glance at the Supplementary Committee and put a tick in a box, hopefully beside my name. But just make a good choice. Thank you.
Any questions for Alex? Casey.
Hi, Alex. If elected, what's the one thing you'd really like to do as a member of Supplementary Committee?
I'd just like to be able to help out however I can, because it's going to all the other people who are elected and giving them everything I can. So if the treasurer wants some help doing things, then I'd be more than happy to do that. If the Speaker's officer would like me to go and write 100 letters to 100 different people, then I'd be glad to do that. It's just anything I can do to give back to the union, because I just think it's such a fantastic thing that we've got. And it's a really rare opportunity that we can have a union that is this impressive.
Thank you, Alex. And now we have our final candidate for Supplementary Committee for Michaelmas 2013, Regine Hannon.
Hi, hello. I'm Rasheen. I'm a first-year historian at Trinity, and well, like Simran, the union is something I've heard about for years. It's impressive. It's something I've been looking forward to coming to, and I've been to loads of events this year. I've really enjoyed it, but it's also scared me quite a bit. It looks really scary standing up here and speaking, but they've been doing some things this year that have made it more accessible, and you can speak to people in the bar afterwards. It's made it a lot easier and more approachable, and now I'm standing here and I'd really like to get involved with it, and even though it is actually as scary as it looks. And so I'd like to also help it be even more accessible. I think there are some things Subcom could do to help it be more accessible. We could be made responsible for an email account that people can email queries to, and we can direct it to people who would know what to do, or we can answer them ourselves just to make it that bit more accessible. But mainly I'd just like to help out because it looks really interesting. I'd really like to be involved with it, and it's a really great thing to be involved with.
Any questions for Regine? Raza?
Yeah. Out of speaker events in particular. I think what works best is when you have a real mix of people, not all white men standing here. And I know it's more difficult to get women involved, but I'd really like it if we could try harder. I know everyone will say that, but I think it's really important not to put people off by having all the same kinds of people all the time.
Thank you, Regine. Our candidate for Social Events Officer for Lent 2013, Daniel Hyman, is at an internship in Edinburgh. However, he is joining us both in spirit and visually through the miracle of television. He's going to play a short pre-recorded message. I don't think he'll be answering any questions, but if you would like to ask him any questions, you can certainly email him. His email address is dmh51@cam.ac.uk.
Fellow union members, good afternoon. I hope you're really looking forward to Lisa Kudrow. I'm really sorry I can't be there with you today. Unfortunately, I'm up in Edinburgh, where I've just begun my internship. I'm running for the role of social ents for a variety of reasons. In fact, you've got a good choice between two very good candidates. So firstly, let me say why I think I differ. This is our union. My vision for the union, and I think it's shared with many others here, is it wants to be a more open, friendly and diverse place. We don't want this elitist image, and we want all who are involved to feel valued, and any member to walk through that door and feel that it's their society. I think I have the experience in this place to deliver results. I've held almost every role possible in the union. As treasurer this term, I've tripled my fundraising target. On the Financial Resources Committee, I listened to members and pushed for the disabled toilet. As head of audiovisual, I modernised and revolutionised our YouTube presence, and there's a whole variety of other experiences, particularly relevant to social events, from stewarding to managing the cloakroom at the Freshers' Ball. In fact, the list is endless. Actually, endless is ridiculous to say. The list is quite long. Okay, so the next point I really want to talk about is pragmatism, because that's about getting stuff done, and I think that's crucial for social events. I will contact the right people. I'll get the team set up. We'll have an ENTS committee re-established. We'll have publicity so that you know what ENTS are going on. and we're going to have the most packed term of social Lent to date. My vision for social Lent the bar as the social hub at the centre of town. Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, there'll be events, there'll be ents. So we'll have music post-debate on a Thursday, we'll have a musical showpiece on a Friday, and we'll have a club night on a Saturday. We'll have the weekly ents that you want, meditation, yoga, Zumba. If there's anything else, just let me know, and if enough people want it, I'll put it on. And then we'll have 2 spectacular balls, something like denim, and also one more. And the final thing I'd quite like to do is an inter-college Eurovision Song Contest. So that's great for social events, but what else is my vision? I want to bring social action to social events. The union's charitable aims are the promotion of free speech, and at the moment the union doesn't properly address that. Our other charitable aims is access work. It'd be nice to make the role of social events a bit more, and therefore I'd like to firstly have a forum on freedom of speech and what that means. In fact, making freedom of speech heard so that all voices are heard, and in that extent I'd work closely with the diversity and the women's officer. And then finally, I'd like to increase the number of debating workshops we have for local underprivileged school children. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'll hopefully be connected on the phone. If not, my email address is dmh51@cam.ac.uk.
Could you open the doors, please, and I'll just see if... No, he doesn't think he is. If you would like to ask Daniel a question, any question, then by all means email him. His address is, as he stated and indeed as I stated, dmh51@cam.ac.uk. Okay. Yeah, I think perhaps a little too optimistic. Okay, the next position is Treasurer for Lent 2014. The first candidate is Jamong Gao. Jamong.
Hi, this is on. Hi, I'm Jamon. I'm going to pretend that there's like loads of people here, even if there really isn't. But anyway, so I would like to talk about a few things. I would like to sort of introduce myself. I've been the head of audiovisuals for the last 2 terms, and which is why you see me sort of setting all of this up, and also the microphones and for every single union event in the last 2 terms. And I've also started up the union's iTunes channel, and that's something that I would like to work on in the future, regardless of whether or not I'm head of audiovisuals, or even just a treasurer or not. Because I think the union needs to improve its online access and online publicity, and that's something that I would really like to work on in the future. But now I want to talk to you about why I want to be treasurer. So the reason I want to be treasurer is because I want to not only just get the treasurer streets that the members want, not only to get the treasurer streets that we can get, and also just promote the actually wait, I have my notes. I should probably read them. Thanks. So what I want to do is that as treasurer, I want to promote dialogue with other societies, because we have all these fantastic rooms within the union building that is only used by sort of a couple of the societies, but not all of them. And we need to sort of connect with those societies and engage with them so that we can get the income that we get, and also we need to promote the bar usage, like Dan said, because it's an incredible amount of money that we bring in from the bar, and it's heavily dependent on whether or not members go into the bar and drink, or just, well, not drink. And and this is about reaching out to members, because we need to support access, and we need to support diversity and all those supplementary, well, not just supplementary, but all the other committee structures that we're introducing. Because if we don't support these structures financially or just spiritually, we aren't going to get members involved. And I was involved by just simply helping out Dan, the former head of AV, just filming events once in a while, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And ever since I've been in the union, I've loved it even more. It's just a fantastic place to work with, and I've met some really, really nice people since my time here. And I will also want to sort of promote better spending of your membership fees, because it's important that not only do we get the money in, but we also need to spend it wisely. We need to have more events, such as Bradley Wetford, such as the religion debate, where we have loads of members very interested in the event and bringing in the attendance that we get, but not other events where we're spending lots of money on security, on stewarding, and nobody is actually interested in those events, and that's simply a waste of money, and that's something that I really want to prevent. And so lastly, I also want to just say that I want to also clarify our guest sticker policies, because that's something that's been quite fuzzy for a while, and that's something I will try to improve on in the future. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Jamal. Are there any questions for Jamal? Any from people who aren't candidates? Okay, Alex.
Thank you, Jamal, for your speech. As you know, and as Dan knows, obviously, he was head of AV, we've been trying to push our AV side of things, in particular YouTube, iTunes, all of that sort of thing, but as part of moving the union forward. But, AV equipment doesn't come cheap. It's very, very expensive to maintain, and actually, for those of you who aren't aware, in the past, former student officers have purloined certain pieces of equipment. So what is your vision, taking in mind that bearing in mind you are running for treasurer and you have to keep, you're in charge of the money essentially, balancing the need for AV that you talked about against the need to keep costs down?
I think spending on AV is important because it's a long-term investment for the union structure. It's important because it's pretty much the only thing we can do to get non-resident members back into the union, because once you leave Cambridge, your life membership right now doesn't really mean life membership. It just means a card that is useful if you're in Cambridge. And AV is something that I'm passionate about, and I want to bring in more long-term developments to AV, but at the same time, being treasurer, which is a termly job, I will be managing the short-term finances of the union, and that's something that I would definitely balance and look carefully at.
You get 2. Is there another question for Jamal? From someone who is not a candidate, preferably? Suvi.
In regards to the amount of spare time I have, it's probably because I do engineering, and first year engineering, you really have lots of spare time, regardless of what the other engineers say. Seriously.
Thank you, Jamal. Our next candidate, also for treasurer, is Ram Sarajan. Ram. We'll ring after 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ram. I'm at Corpus, and I'm a third-year mathematician who's going on to study management next year. For me, I think the role of treasurer really comes into 3 distinct components. Firstly, I guess, and probably most importantly, it's trying to secure sponsorship and raising money from, I guess, the big firms that will be here to support the union. Secondly, it's managing the treasurer's treats. And thirdly, it's just being a general hard-working committee member. And I hope to convince you that I'm the best candidate for each of these 3 aspects of the role, and that you should vote for me as the union treasurer. But I guess a little bit about me first, just generally to let you know that I was treasurer of Corpus Boat Club and the JCR president as well at Corpus. And so I think that this experience means that I'm good running on committees and working with other people. And during an internship that I did last summer, I was praised for my, teamwork, working on a team, as well as my individual hard work. Right, I guess I'll begin with the sponsorship aspect of the treasurer role. And I think the best way for the union to raise more money is through a very personal approach when going after companies. I think that lots of people will be doing internships at the firms that will be looking to support the union. I think the best way for us to get more funding is to use the people that we meet through our internships, the people that we get to know. Using this approach, I was able to secure a major sponsor for the Math Society, the Archimedeans, and I think that this approach will work well with the union, and it's what I intend to do. I also think if I were elected treasurer, I would continue sending out, invitations for sponsorship to all the companies, doing the hard work that needs to be done anyway, and that already happens. And it's not something that I'm going to shy away from at all. As the treasurer of the boat club, this is something that I've been doing. It's a growing boat club at Corpus. We've doubled in size over the last 3 years, and we're looking for funding for a new boat, which is something that I have been spending, this year doing. In terms of treasurer's treats, one thing I really want to push for is getting this better advertised. It's something that's hidden away and shouldn't be hidden away at the back of the term card or something. I would like to have a bigger online presence on Facebook for the treasurer's treats. And I'd like to push for weekly treasurer specials to come up. Try and secure maybe 8 treasurer treats across the term, 1 per week, with companies that might not have committed to being involved otherwise. This is a better value for all of us as members of the union and for the companies in Cambridge. And I guess I also want to just mention that I would be a very, very hard-working committee member. I was college rep for Corpus 2 years ago. I've not been able to do so much in the union this year because of my other commitments, but I really hope to be more involved next year. But I will be really involved next year no matter what. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Any questions for Ram, preferably from people who aren't candidates? Yeah.
What was your favourite treasurer's treat this term?
At the risk of sounding like a bit of a stereotypical student, I guess discount on wine has always been my favourite treasurer's treat.
Any other questions for Ram? Albert.
Hi. So the year after next, 2015, is the union's 200th anniversary, and this is obviously both a big opportunity to raise money in the coming year, as well as a huge opportunity to spend money in 2015 as well. So do you have any ideas how you could increase fundraising beyond the norm, both by utilising the fact of this anniversary and the fact that there'll probably be a desire for more money in 2015 itself?
I guess, like I've mentioned, I really think the personal approach and having good communication and negotiation skills, dealing with these big companies is the best way to get money. I think that the best way is through sponsorship. It's the way that we're going to get the most money out of it. But I also think that we can raise money in other ways by, for example, getting more membership. I think the fact that this is the anniversary means that we are going to get more people who want to join the union if we make sure we let the freshers know that this is going to be a big year to be a part of the union.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you very much. Our third and final candidate for treasurer is unable to be here today. He's been called to the US Embassy. Decent excuse. However, he's asked someone to stand in and read a speech for him, which will be done now.
I'm not going to try the American accent, so you're just going to have to bear with this. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my passion my desire to change the union, and in combination with my experience and ideas, that makes me the best candidate for treasurer. By and far, my experience sets me apart from my contenders. As alumni director of the Cambridge University Finance and Investment Society for the past year, I have worked to systematically develop an alumni system with events held or planned globally. Engaging with financial professionals in almost all facets of the industry, I know how to attract investment efficiently and how to utilize those funds maximally. Compounded with my role for treasurer for the Trinity MedSoc for the upcoming year, and my involvement with the union at various levels, from HOEM to treasurers' committees, has given me the insight on the strengths and weaknesses of this institution. My success in debating, 17th in policy debating the US and 2-time state champion, reflects the skills I have acquired that will be useful in defending our financial stability and viability, both internally and externally. What about my ideas? Not one elected candidate in recent history has focused on the long-term solvency of the union. For an open union to exceed, the union must survive its current financial turmoil. Though corporate sponsorship has been recently sought, it has not really reached its potential. Through atypical sponsorship schemes, in addition to supporting transparency and strict accountability, as well as streamlining the union and removing funding for unnecessary bureaucratic committees and their activities, I plan to work towards this open union. Finally, developing a successful alumni network is essential to this cause. This is all in addition to the conventional role as the treasurer for treasurer's cheats and for managing the budget. Ultimately, I am the ideal candidate for the job and what the union needs today. With the bicentennial in less than 2 years, the skills and passion to make a difference is of utmost importance. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions. Do you want to say what his name is? So this is for Ravi Solanki. I don't know if you met him, he's an American guy. His email is rs702. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions on his behalf if I can reasonably answer them. I don't know. Yeah, so you guys have any questions?
I think it's probably best if there are any questions that they be emailed to the candidate.
That's up to you.
So, RS702?
RS702, yeah.
Do you have any questions for Ravi? RS702. Thank you very much. I think we're going to need to press on if that's all right. Indeed, even if it isn't, we're going to do it anyway. The next office up for election is Speaker's Officer for Lent 2014. We have 4 candidates. The first of them is Wesley Cox. Wesley.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Wesley Cox. I'm a first-year economist at St John's. I've absolutely loved the union since I first arrived here, like I'm sure everyone has. I'm a very passionate believer in freedom of speech and opinion, but people often ask me exactly how you would define it. And I think, in my view, the most concise definition I've heard of how I view freedom of speech is that your right to say your opinion does not depend on what your opinion is. And in that case, in that case, it does not matter if everyone in the room disagrees with your opinion views as abhorrent. You still have a right to say it, and that is a view that I would apply when inviting speakers officer. You invite people who are interesting, who are controversial. Who people will want to go and see, even if some people would view their views as abhorrent, even if everyone would view their views as unpleasant, and some people would view them as needing to be silenced. I would not view them as needing to be silenced. I would view them as almost needing to be edged so that they can be criticised. I'm a very approachable person. I have experience in the past of actually organising speakers events. I organised a speaker for a head teachers conference in my county when I was 16. When searching for speakers, I would concentrate on getting people who relate to the issues of the present day, trying to get today's speakers for today's news, and overall, I absolutely love this union. I've really enjoyed it in my time here, and I would hope to try and contribute to the success it's been since I've been here, and hoping into the future.
Question time.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Wesley? Lady at the back.
No, not people wanted them. Joel Fenster was asked last term during an open discussion, would he have invited Adolf Hitler? And so I was thinking, if I was union president in 1936, would I have? And I wouldn't have hesitated, and I'll tell you why. It's because he had set up in his country where he could not be questioned. The point of bringing people here with controversial issues is so that we can question them as well as us as them talking towards us. And so no. If there are controversial views out there, then bringing them here is a place where not only the people on the floor have freedom of speech, people in the audience have freedom of speech. Here you should be able to voice and question any view you like. And if everyone in the audience questions the speaker's views, the speaker's going to have a very hard time.
Any further questions for Wesley, preferably from people who are not candidates for the same office? Albert.
Thanks. So, as a former Speaker's Officer myself, I can tell you it is, as much as we always talk about who we'd want to invite or who we might not want to invite, getting people to actually come is incredibly difficult. So the question I want to ask is about, basically from my experience, there are essentially one of two strategies you can take when inviting people. You can either send out very, very well done targeted letters, really put emphasis on getting them to the people and hope for the best, or you can run a very large number of very generic letters, send them out and just see where you get lucky. So which of those, both of them have been viable in the past, but I wonder which of those might you prefer as an approach?
Well, I think the obvious answer people probably give is somewhere in between. But if you want to be a bit more specific than that, you might send out a lot of. Obviously, you can't send out specific letters to every candidate, to hundreds of candidates, because you have limited time on your hands. But if I was going to pick some kind of happy medium, I would say if you send out generic letters to lots of candidates, and then have some very specific ones for the ones that the members of the union really want to come, the people who are really in tune with the current affairs of the current day, and who you think that there will be an enormous turnout for if they were to come. So if you wanted me to pick where on the sort of the scale of sort of extensive to intensive invitations I would pick, it would be something like that.
Thank you, Wesley. Our next candidate for Speaker's Officer is Raza Habib. Raza.
Do I need the mic? Are we recording this?
We are recording it, yeah.
All right, thanks. I'm Raza Habib. So I've been involved with the union for about 3 years, and in that time there isn't really much I haven't got involved with. I've started off in competitive debating, I was on Subcom, I've been a college rep, I've sat in that office and sent hundreds of invites. I've been involved in organizing debates. I organized the science debate. And it's been 3 years, but I definitely still remember my first debate. I remember the motion of my first debate. The motion of my first debate was this House believes that the House would abolish all private schools. And I remember coming in, I remember people came in polemicizing, knew what they thought, they came in with opinions, and they left having those opinions challenged, and left people poured into the bar. People argued for hours, and the arguments went to the pubs, and the pubs went to people's bedrooms, and we were up till 3 in the morning, and I met so many interesting people that way. And that's really when the union's at its best. The union's at its best when it is challenging people's prejudices, when it's raising questions that people hadn't heard before, when it's bringing to the fore ideas that we weren't aware of. And it's really that atmosphere that got me involved in the union. It's, if you look at the speaker events from that time as well, we had people all the way from sort of A.C. Grayling to Tracy Chevalier. I'm going to have to look at my notes here because the range of speakers we had that time was ridiculous. We had people touching on politics, economics, literature, biochemistry, media, diplomacy, comedy, business, international relations, sociology, and theatre. And that's how it should be. The union should have speakers from all over the place. It's changed a lot whilst I've been here. It's changed in many ways for the better. We've tried to attract more people. We've tried to expand on diversity and it may be more open and be more accessible. But I also feel that the union's in some ways changed for the worse. And in some ways, since I've been here, I kind of feel like the union's drifted from its core focus. When my first term, my first debate, every debate, I felt that I was challenged, that people were arguing about it, that I was really being pushed to think about things. And I worry that the union's become more of a place that's, to a certain extent, about celebrity management. I mean, like, I enjoy hearing people like Lisa Kudrow speak, and I think that's part of what the union's about. But I don't think that should be the core focus. It should be a small element. And if I was elected Speaker's Officer, I'd really try to push back so that we didn't just have big names, but we also had big ideas. And I tried to spread that net as far as possible so that we could get as diverse a range of speakers as possible. The best speakers aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest names, but sometimes the ones who are currently at the forefront of their areas. People who are academics in Cambridge, politicians, people in the media, people writing books, people we haven't necessarily heard of yet. So if you vote for me, I'll try and invite speakers both individually but also thematically so that they're part of a larger conversation. I want to invite people, for example, one of the things I'm interested in at the moment is drone warfare. I'd like to invite people or have a forum on that. I'd like to have people who won't just put up on platforms, but have speaker events where they're in forums where we can question them with panel discussions so that fewer people are put on a pedestal. I'd like to address both sides of the no platform argument. I think it's very easy to say that freedom of speech is important, but we're not clear on what we mean by freedom of speech. And giving people a platform is not necessarily a part of freedom of speech. You don't have to give someone a platform. It's a much more complicated issue. Furthermore, having people who are controversial often costs us a lot of money. Is that something members want? I think it's a really important question. I think those are questions we need to address. And so if I was elected, I'd also work really hard to try and have a clear invitation policy so that when the union is faced with difficult questions, when the Cruiser Women's Campaign is asking us why we invited Dominic Strauss-Kahn or why we invited Julian Assange, we can stand here and we can say we stand for something. There is something we stand for. So if you vote for me, if you vote for Reza Habib, you'll be voting for the candidate with the most experience. You'll be voting with someone who has good ideas and someone who genuinely cares about making the union open and challenging and really challenging people and promoting freedom of speech. Any questions?
Thank you, Reza. Any questions?
Tom Holt.
Hi. So the current success rate of speakers actually accepting invitations is about 100 to 1, I think.
I know. I've been there.
Yeah, so how many of these promises that you could organise thematic speakers? How many of them are actually?
Okay, I've been involved in organising debates. I know what it's like. And so the science debate was the one I was most involved with. And I think organising debates kind of gives you a good idea of how we should go about organising speaker events. Because you, rather than thinking of as many names of people you've heard of, you sit down and you say, this is a topic I'm interested in. I'm interested in the philosophy of science. I'm interested in challenging people's preconceptions about where science sits in society. So I'm going to sit down with the different areas of those arguments. I'm going to look people up. I'm going to read books. I'm going to newspaper articles. I'm going to go to journals. And I'm going to invite people that way. So I'm inviting people who maybe you haven't necessarily heard of. Maybe they're not the biggest names out there, but I'm inviting them thematically. I'm inviting them according to an interesting area, somewhere they might have something to say that people won't have heard before.
Thank you. One more question.
Albert, since you're the only one. I mean, is that all right with you?
Right, so as an avid reader of books and all things current affairs and other issues myself, I would love to see people with great big ideas here. Now, the question I have is that the problem with that is a big name draws a hell of a load more people than a big idea. And one of the most embarrassing things, of course, is a speaker with a big idea coming along to speak to 20 or so people who've heard of this idea before. So my question to you is, although you're not running for publicity officer, it's part of your responsibility to make sure that the speakers you invite are well received here. So what would you say about that?
So I'd have kind of two things to say to that. There's kind of two examples that come to mind when I'm asked that question. And one is Quentin Skinner, who's an intellectual historian who gave a talk at Christ's the same day as we had Hugh Bonneville here, and the other is Roger Penrose, who spoke here. And both those speakers, Roger Penrose and Quentin Skinner, attracted audiences of close to 400 people outside the union at events that were hardly publicized. There is a market for it in Cambridge. We shouldn't patronize people here. They're interested and they are active. I think by selling the union to people, when people come in Freshers Week, and selling it on the big name, selling it on the Hugh Bonneville, selling it on the Lisa Kudrow, we build up a membership that comes to expect that what they want is celebrities. If people start thinking of the union as they did when I was first here, as the place where we have debate, I don't think we'll have a problem with turnout. Those people attract audiences elsewhere. They do. There is a market for it. We've got to wonder why they don't come here when we have them here, and I think it's because of the way we sell the union.
Thank you. Thank you, Reza. Right. Our next candidate for Speaker's Officer is James Hutt. James.
There's three areas I want to try and address in this, which fits nicely with 3 minutes. First, I want to talk about the speakers, then about my management, and then something a little bit about me to finish. I think when you're presenting to me, perhaps fall quite cynical. Don't worry, I won't start again. I think that all three of those are really quite important to this role. So about speakers, what's my experience in this? Why can I stand up and say that I'm going to be any different or any better to the other people that you've just heard or are about to hear? And I think that a lot of it comes down to the experience I've had so far. I'm only a first year, but I've already got quite heavily involved in lots of inviting. I sent out the invite to David Moyes, who some of you might have come to. I sent out lots of invites to other people just as interesting, most of whom said no. But actually that experience has given me a lot to work with. And when I was asking one of the committee members, and I won't name them because I'm not sure they'd appreciate that, I said, what can I actually sell that's good about me that would make me a good speakers officer? And they said, you're quite good on the phone to people. Now, that's not something I can prove to you here. That's not something that might sound important. But actually, the way we get most speakers is by ringing up their agent personally and selling them the union for why they want to come to us. And I think that's really important. I think I've shown that I'm good at meeting people. I've been senior guest liaison this term, so I've met every single speaker that we've had come to the union, bar one, I think. And I think that they've had a good time, and if any of you doubt that, then ask them whether they'd come back, and hopefully they'd say they would. The second thing I want to talk about is management, and I think that what's been set up so far is speakers committees, and they're really, really good. And this brings me on to Albert's question that he asked earlier on about what policy we'd take, whether we'd invite lots of people or whether we'd invite just a few people with really targeted emails. I think the big thing with speakers committees is you can do both. You can have Raz's dream of people who are really interested and invite the people they're really interested in, and you can have some people's dream of celebrity, and you can send out 50 emails or 100 emails in an afternoon and hope that you get one, because the union should be able to cater to all of its members, not just some with specific interests, and not just some that have no interest at all. I think this is the way that we get the most efficient inviting of speakers, and I think that if you ask me afterwards, I haven't got time to list it all, but I've been on too many committees, I have no free time or no social life. So that's the way that I believe that I can run committees well enough for those to go ahead. And the third thing I want to talk about is it's about me, it's integrity. Yeah, I'm only a first year, so why do I think I can stand here and run for a position against someone who arguably has far more experience than me? And the answer is because I've worked my way up, and I've done it quite quickly, but I've done it from the bottom. I was a college rep in first term. I ran for Subcom, I lost, but it was good experience. I ran for an appointed position, I didn't get it. I ran for another one, and this time I did. And I've been encouraged by people I work with at every step of the way to try and apply to something. And that's what I want to do. I've wanted to get involved with the union from when I first arrived, and it's not easy. Completely sympathize with someone who said that the union is a scary place to be, and it is. But I think that someone who's been through that and has gone up through the ranks and has tried to actually get somewhere and prove to people that they can do it is far more beneficial than someone who did a position a few terms ago, comes back, hasn't been to the union all term, and thinks that they can suddenly run it. Thank you. Any questions?
James? Any questions? It's the Cambridge Union? Yeah.
Thank you, James. Speaking as someone who's been involved for all of my Cambridge career, Easter terms are notoriously difficult to fill, partly because everyone's on exams, or most people who study proper subjects are, partly because that doesn't fit into the speaker's cycle of when people invite. Usually we get, as for those of you who don't know, usually there's a large uptick in people accepting after Christmas, so Lent is usually quite good in that regard. But how would you rate the success of this, because it's the only Easter term you've seen, and how would you rate the success and balance of speakers during this Easter term?
I think, without wanting to sort of put a lot of praise on any one person, I think Imogen deserves a hell of a lot of praise, because I think this Easter term has been really strong, particularly for the speakers' events, because I think we've covered a lot of bases. We've covered a very popular event that we're having later on, Lisa Kudrow. We've covered a sports base that people often don't see. We've had intellectuals. We've had actors. We've had scientists. We've had philosophers. Had 2 philosophers. We did really well. And I think that actually we're working pretty close to Raz's dream of having every kind of speaker for every kind of person. And I think that actually that's something we should continue, not say that we can't do.
Another question for James. You sure?
If you do have any questions, send me an email. It's JWH51. I'm sure you all came for Hustings, so I'm sure you must have some.
Thank you, James. And our final candidate for Speaker's Officer is Leo Kirby. Leo.
Thank you. So, my name is Leo Kirby. I'm a fresher at Fitzwilliam College studying land economy. So I'll probably have plenty of free time next year to do a good job. I've been involved with the union mostly over the last term. I was involved in Michaelmas a bit with college reps. I joined really over the Easter holidays. I joined the holiday committee. And that was a fantastic introduction. We stayed for a few days, and I spent essentially 5 days with James firing out literally hundreds of different emails to different speakers. So I'm well acquainted with the concept of you can invite pretty much whoever you like, but it's essentially something of a lottery as to who you actually get. So I've got quite a lot of experience actually in firing off different invitations. I invited Miss Kudrow, who's coming, I'm sure you're all here to see, not us, so I'll try and keep this as short as possible. This term I've been head of campus publicity, which is a deeply glamorous job, as I'm sure you can sympathise with. I know an unhealthy amount about poster distribution and term cards. But aside from that, managing a small team, as the small publicity team, is an experience which I would hope would lend itself well to managing a small committee of the small speakers committee. And it's a speakers committee which really I would like to focus on as a potential speakers officer. I think it's absolutely vital to try and get more people involved with the union. And I agree with James, and it's quite an intimidating place to come into. It seems like once you are kind of looking in from the outside, it can be extremely like a clique, which I think is something which needs to be broken down. And the way I would try to do that is just encourage an enormous amount of people to come to speakers committee at any stage, whether it's coming up with ideas to invite speakers or writing invitations or liaising with agents and publicists. And that is absolutely vital to build up a rapport with people's agents, because often, which is something we learned on the holiday committee, there is a particular agent or a publicist or a company who will manage an enormous range of people, of celebrities or musicians or actors, whoever. And so by establishing a relationship with one agent, you may then have access to dozens of people who would be interested in coming to speak. Something else I'd like to focus on and continue is the diverse range of speakers, which we did have this term under Imogen. I think it's an enormous testament to the speakers committee and particularly Imogen this term that the chamber was packed out almost always because of partly because of publicity, largely because of the quality of the speakers, and ranging from David Moyes to Peter Singer. I mean, completely. I don't know if people came to both, but it seemed to me that there was a completely different crowd in the chamber and different kind of atmosphere, and that is exciting because I think there is always a danger actually that people coming to the union can just focus on politics, and that's something which I would actively try and resist.
Thank you, Leo. Are there any questions for Leo? Alex.
Thank you. No, I will. Maybe. As a fresher, I just wanted really your opinion on whether you thought in terms of, I won't go into specifics, but money, publicity, prestige, what she said. I don't know if you came to see what Marine Le Pen said. Whether you thought that particular event, and kind of interacting with the whole debate about whether we should invite her or whether we shouldn't, what you thought about that event, whether you think it was worth having her, or would you have not disinvited, but would you have invited a different French politician or someone else?
Well, with Marine Le Pen, I think it was an interesting issue because she commanded, I believe, 18% of the French vote, more, 18%, which is an enormous number of people, and so I think it's actually, a lot of people cry you shouldn't be giving oxygen to the fire of right-wing politics, but actually it seems like that publicity is already there. And I think I would agree with Wesley saying in that, actually, I think by coming to the union and facing quite tough questioning, I think that's probably actually a good thing. With regards to the cost, perhaps, personally, don't think I would have invited her, but as she was invited, she shouldn't have been disinvited in the same way that Nick Griffin was from the Oxford Union.
There isn't another question for Leo, is there? No. Right. Do please open the floodgates. Thank you. Right. Thank you to those of you who've just come for coming. The next position is Executive Officer for Lent 2014. We have 2 candidates. The first is Tim Squirrel. Tim.
Well, it's really good to see so many people turn up for Hustings, and it's really exciting. I'm glad that you come for this. Probably the most well-attended Hustings I've ever seen, which is aided somewhat by the fact that you're not here for this. Okay, so I'm going to break my speech into 2 parts. First is my experience. The second is my vision for what the union should be going forward. So I'm currently head of recruitment, along with a couple of others, and that means coordinating Freshers Week, coordinating our drive to get as many members as possible and to sell the union to incoming freshers, which is difficult because it's obviously expensive and obviously you're trying to get a large amount of money off of people. So there's a large amount of organisation stuff involved. I'm also involved with the TAB. I'm on the editorial team there. Again, a large amount of organisational stuff. So executive officer is essentially a lot of organisation. It's mopping up after other people. It's making sure that things happen when they need to happen and where they need to happen. And I think I have a large amount of experience in making sure that that can happen. So, secondly, which I think is more interesting, what I think the union is about. Now, we've had a lot of talk about free speech already and what it means to have free speech and the conception of whether we should be inviting certain people. But I think that the second part of the union slogan, which is promoting free speech and the art of debating, that part is always neglected. Now, I come from a background of doing competitive debating this year, and I think that's one of the most interesting things about the union, is engaging people in arguments. Now, events like this one are fantastic. They attract huge crowds. People are very, very excited to meet people, meet celebrities and their idols. And that's great. But these events should be the exception rather than the rule. We shouldn't be focusing just on getting big names who people want to see. We should be focusing on engaging people in debate. When on a Thursday night, I don't want to necessarily come here and have 6 people stand up, talk about emotion, talk about completely different things, and sort of have no kind of engagement whatsoever. I want 6 people who completely disagree and who have all their prejudices challenged and have an audience who goes away and talks about the debate for days afterwards because it was so interesting and because it challenged all the things that they previously thought. I think that's what we want as a union. I think that the best debate we could have is one which is engaging. Now, my ideas for this include things like introducing more 2-person debates. So, for example, I thought that when we had Marine Le Pen here, that was interesting, probably not worth the cost, but at the same time, it would have been much better if we'd still put on a platform with another person opposite her who could then actually directly replied to her views. I think that's much more interesting. I think it's always more interesting to have 2 people arguing rather than one person stating their views, even if you're allowed to question them afterwards. In addition, I think that quite often in debates, whenever we sub sort of students in at the last minute because someone's dropped out, I think that often the student speakers are some of the best speakers we have in debates. I think they're incredibly interesting because they're so passionate about their subject, they don't have a reputation to rely on, they can't just sit back on their laurels and say, well, I'm Richard Dawkins and I've written this stuff and therefore you should listen to me. They have to really, really work to make the audience like them, to make people listen to them. And I think that means that they are some of the most interesting speakers in debates. And I think for that reason, we should always have at least 1 or 2 students, probably 1 on each side, during a debate, even if that makes it longer, because I think it makes it much, much more interesting. So that's my vision for the union. I've told you about why I'm qualified for this job. And for all these reasons, I would love you to vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have any questions for Tim? Yeah.
Do you think with 2 people you can get a representation of every view on the topic, though.
No, absolutely not. But I think that there's a certain amount to be said for the sort of dialectic view of having a thesis and antithesis and then coming out with some kind of synthesis from that. And that was so pretentious. No, I think that there should obviously still be audience engagement, and I think it's still very, very important to have the students in the room very much engaged in the debate, but I think it's also very, very interesting. It's much better to have two people arguing about a topic rather than this one person sort of spouting rhetoric and then occasionally getting a reply. I don't know if anyone here was at the Marine Le Pen event, but it was basically someone would ask a question, she would rant for 5 minutes, and then we'd get another question. There was no opportunity for someone with an equal footing with her to then challenge what she just said and not sort of be shouted down because they were just one person in the audience.
Any other questions for Tim? People who want candidates? Any? Right. James.
A lot of your talk's been about like the vision that you've got, and I think that's really admirable. But from what I've seen Beverly this term, a lot of what she does isn't vision; it's just do it. Like it's not a glamorous job, except how are you going to cope with that?
I completely agree. It's very much not a glamorous job. It's a job which involves lots of chasing after people, lots of making phone calls, lots of basically cleaning up when things slip through the cracks. But that's something which you can't really talk about how you're going to do that. Nobody thinks that's particularly interesting. I think it's something that you prove by experience rather than by just saying, hey guys, look how good I am at doing things. You can't really explain that in a speech. And so I think it's much more interesting to talk about where you see the union going. I think that's also part of it. It's part of being on standing committee, it's part of being on a team who have a vision for where they want the union to go and where that term is headed. I think that's probably more interesting, even if it's not the vast majority of what the job is.
Thank you, Tim. Our next and indeed final candidate for executive officer is Nick Wright. Nick.
Is this on? Hello. So my name is Nick Wright and I'm running for executive officer, and I am going to focus on what the executive officer actually does on a day-to-day basis, because I think that's the important thing and that's what you should be voting on. So in the Constitution, the executive officer is defined as saying is responsible for implementing the decisions of standing committee and fulfills a general facilitation role between other committee members. So, I mean, what does that actually mean? Well, basically, I think it's a role which is supposed to be making sure that everything in the union runs smoothly on a day-to-day basis. You've got to coordinate between all the different officers, organise events, make sure that people are talking to each other, make sure that everyone is working together to achieve a better whole for the union, because ultimately that's what the executive officer is all about. You've also got to be competent, ready to sort of step in at the last minute to troubleshoot problems when they crop up. Because very often, I've been quite involved in this term, and some of the things that happen, so even on the day of debate, speakers drop out, you've got to be ready to jump on that, make phone calls, make sure that the debate's filled up, make sure it's going to be a good event for members. And also, I think debates are important. I think, as what Tim was saying, we do need to make sure that the debates are actually sort of really engaging members. And I think one of the things I'd really like to do is kind of work with the debaters in Cambridge. I'm not a great debater myself, but I'd really like to work with the debaters to try and design motions a bit more to make sure that they're not sort of going around in circles and we're not really getting anywhere with the debate. And I think that would be really important. So why would I be good at this role? Well, this term I've been on Supplementary committee, which is also famously ambiguous. I've sort of, I've sort of given it my all. And, in terms of speakers, at the last minute, I got Stephen Timms, who's a former welfare minister, to come and speak in the debate on welfare. And I've also secured interest from a senior government minister and a number of ambassadors from major countries for the Michaelmas team. And in addition to this, I also played a major role in organising the presidential debate. Sort of some of the officers retreated to the library and said, Nick, how would you feel about helping out organising this debate? So I was like, yeah, sure. So I sort of spent most of last week trying to deal with the debate on Israel-Palestine, which I assure you was not the easiest thing in the world. And I think that kind of experience really makes me a great candidate for the role of executive officer in terms of doing the job well and, sort of going out there and making sure that debates run well and that, it's a great term for members. But I also think that the role of executive officer could be and should be so much more than just, making sure that things run smoothly. But I think that, kind of saying that you're going to go out there and you're going to change the world as executive officer is a little bit ambitious. But I do think that in that kind of coordination role, you do have the ability to kind of really push one thing. And I think that, and Tim and some other people are running on a ticket for an open union. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful idea. But I think the union is becoming more open at the moment. I think that, the work that Joanna Mobed over there is doing, probably deserves a round of applause actually, but anyway, is doing in terms of sort of broadening out the committee structure, getting loads more people involved, sort of making the union less scary, like Roisin said. So I think what I'd really like to push is sort of making the union more accountable, because I think that that's the way that we sort of open it up more. So, if I were elected executive officer, I would really like to to encourage union officers not to just go and lock themselves away in the dining room after debates, to go out and engage with members and talk to them about their concerns, ask them questions, kind of criticise them. And I think that's the best way to create an open union. In addition to this, I'd also have a designated time during the week for officers to be in the building for them to ask questions to. 1 minute. And I'd also, well, not a minute, but almost, just let me get through these final points. I'd also reform the college rep system, because I think that doesn't work very well at the moment. If you want to ask me questions about that, please feel free to. And I also set up a new email address for members to sort of ask their questions to, and they receive a guaranteed response from a new executive committee I set up. Thank you very much.
Right. Any questions for Nick? Albert.
I've never done this before, but as it's my last time here, I think I should. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Thank you, Albert. No, I think I just about sort of frantically managed to get through to the end of my speech. But in terms of, I think that if I sort of go back to this issue of accountability, because I really think that, if you have a more open union with loads of people, sort of getting involved, I think that the one thing that is still kind of lacking is, we're all standing here, apart from the people of the subcom, to be elected for, basically for 2 terms of office. 1 term as officer-elect and 1 term then as an officer. And I think it's kind of slightly strange that between sort of being elected and leaving office, you don't really have to answer to anybody unless you're going to run for something else, which most people aren't going to do. And so I really want to kind of make sure that if I get elected as executive officer, I push the union in the direction of making sure that officers are answerable to members, that they sort of talk to members, that they take their concerns on board, that they take criticism, and if members don't like things that the officers are doing, they can challenge them about it. And, hopefully either the officers can, kind of convince them of, why they're doing it, or, they can sort of, disagree with them. And, everyone kind of feels much more engaged in the union, and they sort of feel as though their interests as members are being served much better than just, electing someone for 2 terms and then, nothing, them not having to sort of be answerable to anyone for what they're doing. So, yeah, that's sort of my main focus. That would be sort of my main focus in addition to the kind of role of executive officer, to the sort of core role of executive officer as I laid out.
Any further questions? None? Okay. The floodgates again, please. So we now have Hustings for the final office up for election for Easter 2013. That is the Presidency for Lent 2014. We have 3 candidates. The first is Amy Gregg. Amy.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming along this afternoon. To briefly introduce myself, my name's Amy, and I'm a second-year lawyer at Murray Edwards, and I've been the diversity officer here at the union for the past 2 terms. I'm running for president because I've absolutely loved being involved in the union and want to play an instrumental role in pulling together one of the terms that I've really enjoyed in the past. But also, it's because I recognise there is still so much that we can improve in the union, and I want to be the driving force behind this change. First and foremost, speakers and debates. Providing you, our members, with the opportunity to engage with the world's most influential figures in politics, in film, in science, in academia, that is what sits at the heart of the union. Be it through debates, forums, or individual speaker events. We are so much more than a student debating society, and if elected president, I would ensure excellent speakers and quality topical debates, really making the union relevant to students across Cambridge. The amazing turnout over the past term for speakers like Michael Sandel shows that the previous trend towards exhibiting maybe A-listers to the exclusion of other speakers isn't necessary, and I'd renew focus on getting top speakers who are famous in their field rather than necessarily on the front page of Hello. To do so, I'd reform and improve the invitations process that the union uses. The Speakers Committee set up this term has shown us how efficient we can be. I'd formalise and expand this, hold a letter writing week at the end of Michaelmas, and reform the current scattergun approach we have to invitations by establishing real links with government departments, political think tanks, agents, major newspapers to generate a pool of excellent speakers. I also want you to have more of a say in who we invite. I'd encourage speaker suggestions from and debate motion suggestions from members in person, online, and something as simple as having suggestion boards in the union bar. And I would prioritise these invites. Alongside this, I set up an online forum for pre- and post-debate discussions so you get the most out of your events. But then, it's not all about debates and speakers. I want more and better events, live music, drinks deals, and promoting the union's Saturday night bar nights so that the union can really become the social hub of Cambridge as well as the political hub. I also want members to have the maximum opportunities to get involved in their society and really take ownership of it. When I first got involved in the distant past of Supplementary Committee, as an outsider, it did seem that pathways into the union were limited. To challenge this, I'd expand and formalise the social ents, the treasurer and the speakers committee to provide maximum opportunities to get involved in the union. Alongside this, I promote student debatings, really encouraging new and old faces to take part in the emergency debates and debating workshops. For those who still want to say in how the union is run but don't necessarily want to become a hack and get too involved, I'd establish better feedback mechanisms, formalising college reps so you have a recognisable point of contact in your college with the union. I'd promote the termly diversity forums and introduce weekly drop-in coffee breaks with the officers. We're answerable to you, so we should be a friendly, known, accessible point of contact. Furthermore, I think it's really important to pursue a union that's inclusive and accessible. I'd support the Women's and Diversity Officers continue the push to host more female speakers, alongside producing an annual report, recording progress, and setting targets. I'd also focus on event diversity, incorporating a broad range of debate motions and forum topics to ensure the union provides something for all members, not just the usual crowd of often lawyers and PPS students, including topics on science, sport, music, art. Alongside this, I pursue proposals drawn up past Diversity Officer to finally introduce a membership fee payment by instalments. It's been promised in the past but never delivered, but the main reason for not joining has always been given when speaking to friends is the cost of membership. To stagger payments will ease the immediate financial impact of buying membership and improve access to the union. Finally, I want to introduce long-term change for a stronger union that is better able to serve its members. The current website is archaic. I want a professional new website that's more accessible to you as members and more appealing to sponsors, so we can use it to promote the union in the 21st century on a global stage. I also want stronger links with other Cambridge societies and greater continuity between terms by introducing longer terms for appointees and a new committee that brings together the wealth of experience of former officers. So in short, my vision for the union is excellent speakers, greater member involvement, structural change, and greater access. I want to ensure that Lent 2014 is the best term the union has seen so far. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Do we have any questions for Amy? Right, lady there.
Thanks. You've got a lot of great ideas, but being a third-year lawyer is a really difficult thing. There's a lot of work. How would you think you'd be able to manage the time effectively?
Well, from my past experience, I'm pretty good at time management. This year, alongside being diversity officer, I've been women's officer for the Labour Club. I've been on the mooting subcommittee. I've balanced, the degree thing on the side as well, and I row as well. So I am good at time management. But I can guarantee that if things got too much alongside other commitments, that the union would be the priority. I've dedicated a lot of time to this place, and I would be more than willing to continue this.
Any other questions? Ben.
So you say you want to improve relationships with societies, but there are some societies with which the union has a pretty frosty relationship with. You mentioned one yourself, the Labour Club, and KUSU in general is a bit strained. What would you do to improve those relationships? Because we could have more sort of multivocality within the union.
I think the main problem we have at the moment is that we wait until crisis point before we attempt to kind of liaise with other societies. Say for last term with Marine Le Pen, there was no dialogue going on between the union and KUSU really before that. And so when that came out, it was very much two societies that didn't really have much relationship with one another, opposed to one another. And so I think the main thing is just establishing a long-term dialogue with these other societies, working on, say, hosting maybe joint events and just stronger links and having points of contact and really talking to people, because I think at the moment the main issue is just the fact that there's just no discussion going on, and so when something kind of bad happens it all kicks off. And so just promoting a stronger dialogue throughout the year, like in the good times as well as the bad, I think could really help challenge that.
A third and final question for Amy. Albert.
So one of the things that can really make or break a union presidency is relationships both with and within your team. And that includes both good working relationships with the staff here, but especially with standing committee and your standing committee. And it can be really damaging, of course, to the union if political or factional differences get in the way of a team functioning effectively. So my questions are, why do you think you would be able to successfully lead a team made up of any of the candidates running for positions here? And how would you try and prevent factional differences, if they arise, from getting in the way of your team functioning effectively?
Well, I think to just generally respond to that, if you're talking about, say, political fractions in the... Okay, then the team. I think it's just generally promoting a good relationship outside of work and having really strong social relationships with other people on the team. So it's not just colleagues that you're working alongside, it's your friends that you're able to kind of treat as grown-up adults and not maybe descend in some of the kind of more childish political arguments that perhaps have been in the union in the past, and really just kind of having a more mature attitude to the way that we run the union. I think promoting, at the heart of it, the union isn't about politics, it's not about creating politicians, it's about providing an excellent term for members and just keeping that always in the forefront, keeping perspective and really focusing on what we're delivering, not what we're doing in standing committee. I think shifting that focus could really help with that.
Thank you, Amy. Our second candidate for president is Imogen Schern. Imogen.
Hi, so I'm Imogen, a second-year historian at Murray Edwards, and I'd really appreciate your vote on Monday, because if you vote for me, you're voting for an absolutely fantastic Lent 2014 at the union. And central in this is a more approachable and open union and a more efficient union, a 21st century union. So to give you a bit of background about myself, when I came to Cambridge, I think I spent the first term and a half in the library and not particularly enjoying myself. I came to the union quite a lot and quite enjoyed it. So when in Lent 2012, I guess, there was an advert for a college rep at my college, I thought, yeah, I'll do that. And then I got more involved. I was elected to Supplementary Committee, was Head of Campus Publicity, and have been Speaker's Officer, and I imagine you're all here for Lika Kadre. But I'm not actually telling you to vote for me because of my experience, but actually because I really care, because I'm really excited about making Lent 2014 absolutely fantastic for you, and that's because I've got the vision to do that. So let me tell you about Lent. I've got this, we've had Tim Minchin, Neil Gaiman, David Moyes, Michael Sandel, Peter Singer. We've had really good events this term. And I have a track record of doing that. On top of that, I'd change it. I'd think I'd introduce smaller speaker events, like Raza said, actually. So I'd sort of, we've got a huge building, we can use it. We had John Boyne earlier this term, and 70 people came, and 70 people really enjoyed themselves. I think we can put on those events for members with niche interests, on top of the big A-list events that you're all here for today. I'd introduce themed weeks. I think we should have a more integrated union. So we could have a denim-style event, and on top of that, we could have a debate on LGBT issues, or we could have a debate on China's role in the world, and then we could have a social event, sort of China-themed, later in that week. I'd like to put on a TED Talk at the union, and I'd like to do social events with employers. So like the Law Society do champagne and chocolates, I'd like to do stuff like that sponsored by Baker McKenzie or whatever law firm it is. I'd like to do stuff like that here at the union, because people here need jobs, and people here like subsidised social events. And I think it would be a real perk of membership if we could do that. But I told you that I'd got a good track record, and what I don't have a good track record of is sitting in a room on my own writing invites and sending out loads of those. That's not what my track record is. It's of getting people involved. So in Michaelmas 2012, I started the publicity committee and got sort of 14 people involved that way. And then last time I started the first weekly meeting speakers committee, which had 50 members. And that's why we have this great term. It's not because of me. But it is because I can facilitate it. And I think that the way to make an even better term is to get people involved in all aspects of the union. Clearly, that's what we have to do. And to do that, we need to be more approachable. So I want to make Lent 2014 a term in which we do nothing which we wouldn't say to any member we do. So that means we'd cut down on union dinners. It means that we'd have members in the bar we'd have officers in the bar talking to members. We'd have a union run by membership rather than sort of leaders who are just distant. We'd have an improved and transparent applications process. We'd have officers on Cam FM and CUTV enthusing everyone else about what's going on at the union this week, not just at crisis moment, but at all the times. And we'd probably have an access debate, because the Kusu shadowing scheme happens during Lent. And it's really, a central part of university life, and the union was always shut off to it, and we wouldn't be. We'd have a debate, probably this house believes that university isn't worth the fees, something to really discuss with those people what we should do. And the final way that I'd change Lent 2014 is I'd make a much more efficient union. So I'd have a survey to record members' views when they came in Michaelmas 2013. So instead of the feedback forms on the back of debates, sort of order papers, what I'd do is when people join up, I'd ask them if they want politicians, I'd ask them if they want actors, I'd ask if they want economics people or if they want sports people, so that we know what we're doing. We have a mandate for what we're doing in Lent. I'd have a centralised invites process, because at the moment I have 900 invites on my computer. Alex Porter probably does, the last speakers officer before me. I'm sure Oliver Jackson does for Michaelmas. And I'd make a sort of Dropbox account with all those invites centrally, so that we would have an access and a resource to use term after term. That would mean that we can make more invites, and more invites means more speakers and better events. So please vote for me, because I'd bring you an absolutely fantastic Lent 2014, which would lay the basis for even better and more fantastic terms in the future. It would be an approachable union, it would be an efficient union, it would be a 21st century union.
Thank you, Imogen. Do we have any questions for Imogen? For Imogen? Albert.
Yeah. So it's the same question as I asked Amy, actually. Why do you think you would be able to successfully lead any of the candidates who are here, who are elected to standing committee, and how do you think you could work around political or factional differences that could arise?
Well, I don't believe in running on a slate. I'm not doing that. I want to actually, because I think Daniel Hyman is unopposed for social events officer, and I am supporting him. And I think that actually the important thing, the reason not to do that, is because you're going to have to work with whoever's elected. You're going to have to form a team of whoever there is. And that means that you've got to sort of, obviously when you're running, you do what you can to win. But once you've done that, then you've got a new team. You've got something fresh to work with. And I'd really work, as Amy said, with social events for the team, but also for the whole team, not just the 5 members of standing committee, so that everyone knew each other really well. And I don't think, everyone's here, everyone stood here and said, vote for me because I'm going to create a great term. That's what people want to do. And ultimately, you can't let factional differences come between that.
Any more questions for Imogen? Richard.
Well, I've been a member of the union for a few years. And every hustings, I hear candidates for office, and particularly president, saying, we're going to make the committee more approachable, we're going to talk to the members, we're not going to hide away, we're going to come into the bar and talk to people. And at almost every debate I go to, the committee all go off into a huddle in the dining room and they never speak to anybody. So why are you different? Why are you really going to make it happen?
Well, I'd say firstly, I'm different because from time immemorial, I don't know what people know about officers' dinners. It's not a hugely exciting topic. But from time immemorial, the elected officers have gone to dinner with the speakers. And I think it's completely correct that you obviously should have students having dinner with the speakers because obviously you couldn't just have them having dinner with themselves. But this term, Daniel Hyman and I sort of created an initiative on standing committee and got the other elect officers, apart from the president, because we felt that the president should be at them all, to only go to 3 rather than 5 of the debate dinners. And so I have a track record of sort of trying to, and I think that's important to make the union more sort of somewhere that members feel they own and that's part of it and not people taking perks from it. And I've always tried to go into the bar afterwards. And I think I have a track record of sort of making change. I'm pretty convinced I could do this.
Any further questions? Raza.
Hi, Imogen. Thanks for your speech. I thought there were a lot of interesting ideas there. One of the things that you said that kind of sort of twinged me a little bit was you said that when people sign up, you wanted to sort of ask them what they wanted from the union. And it seems to me that seems to be the wrong way to go about it. Rather than asking people at the point of joining whether they want to hear politicians or sports personalities or whatever, it seems to me we should be selling the union as an idea that stands for something to new members. And we should already know what we stand for when people come to join us, rather than the other way around.
Well, I'd have 2 points to say to that. The first is that I think that members would say that what they want is the intellectual discussion. Because actually, when, one of the most successful events of term, the one where I got a text from a friend saying, Imogen, I'm going to run for Speaker's Officer. He didn't in the end. But Imogen, I'm going to run for Speaker's Officer because that was so great, was Michael Sandel. And last term we did a sort of forum to find out what people thought about our invites policy. We found that actually most of them thought that free speech was what should be, that we shouldn't have a no-platform policy at all. That's what the vast majority of people here thought. I think that this survey would affirm what we already think, but I want to know we're doing that because people are giving us £150 and rising to join our union, and we shouldn't be enforcing on them what we want them to have. We should be
I understand doing that from members, but why from people joining?
Sorry?
My question wasn't about doing that from members. That makes sense. It's just people joining the union at the point at which they join.
Well, I think it's quite important we find out why they think they're parting with £150.
Thank you, Imogen. Our final candidate for president, and indeed for all offices in these elections, is Casey Swerner. Casey.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't keep you long because I know you really want to watch Lisa Kudrow. By the end of the speech, I want to show you 2 things. 1, why I think I have the best experience for the job, and 2, why I think I have the best ideas for the job. And from that, I hope it will follow that you will vote for me on Monday. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a second year. I'm going into my final year. I joined the union right at the beginning of my first year, and I immediately became a guest liaison for quite selfish reasons. Actually, I really wanted to meet the people who were coming to speak because I thought they were awesome. And then from that, I've done a bit of debating. I've debated for Cambridge on the medical ethics debate. And then in Michaelmas last year, I became the union's treasurer. In that time, I've raised the record amount of sponsorship for any term in the union as a treasurer, and more than 2009 and 10 and 2010 and 11 combined. So I feel like I have a good base of experience of knowing how the union works and how to really not only do an adequate job, but to really make it successful. Moreover than that, I organised the music debate in Michaelmas, which was one of our largest attended debates. In that term, we had a full chamber for every single debate, and even overflow rooms, even going into the 8th week. Further from that, I've invited speakers, and I've even interviewed speakers such as Antonio Carluccio when he came here. So I know how to engage with speakers and how to make them feel welcome here. I've also done a lot of stuff inside the union. I'm not someone who spent their whole career in the union the whole time and done just that. I've worked a lot for something called the Royal Institution in London, which is a members' organisation of over 20,000 members internationally. And I've looked at their vision and how they engage young members and how we go about bringing a vision to people who part with a lot of money to come and see these things. From that, I've got organised speakers, but I've also looked at how we can make most of what is quite an expensive contribution. Furthermore, I've organized at school the largest first-time MUN conference in Europe, so I have a good understanding of how to organize large events. So that's a broad and brief introduction of my experience and what I've done in order to feel that I'm the best prepared for this job. But ultimately, it's about what I want to do with this job. And I think we really need to think about what the point of the union is. And for me, I want to change your mind on one thing. If you come into all your debates and you change your mind once, I think the union has done its job in some manner. And I want anyone to be able to do that. I don't want anyone to be inhibited because of access or because of cost to do that. And I can talk to you a lot about what a general vision is of how the union can be, but you all know that. You're all here, and you know when the union is good, and you know what it feels like to come into a debate and think, you know, that was really good. And it's unbelievable that we got someone to speak like Richard Dawkins or Marilyn Penn or DSK, and I got to hear their views, even if I didn't agree with them. So I'm going to give you 5 specific things that I'm going to do. First of all, on our invite policy. I was here in the term when we invited DSK, when we invited that, but then didn't invite, but sort of invited Julian Assange. And I know what it's like to have to harangue and go through 8 hours of meetings to discuss it. I will have a member-voted policy on what our invite policy is and what we mean by free speech by the start of Lent, guaranteed. So that way we get it right. I will talk to Lauren. Lauren was a friend of mine. She was at the union women's office before she left. And I will talk to Kusu, and we will get a better relationship of what we mean by an open union and what we mean by free speech. In terms of engagement, you've paid a lot of money to be here, some of you up to £175. I want you to be able to online book any room in this union to be able to use for whatever you want at any time, so long as we're not using it. On top of that, I want this place to be affordable. I don't want anyone to come into the Cambridge University or Anglia Ruskin and not be able to be a member of the union. And we're going to do that by payment by installment. We're going to have a much more sensitive payment method that we understand where people's bursaries are coming from, as opposed to a simple on-off system of you do or you don't have a bursary. I also think the college payment plan is a great idea, and I think it's unfortunate that it's somewhat stalled, and we're going to look to do that. And I'm going to talk to my college, certainly, and I'm going to make sure that every college is spoken to, and we discuss that. Secondly, I want to talk about the union for the future, because I don't want to be a caretaker president. I want to actually make a change. Now, we're very fortunate that in 2015 it will be our 200th anniversary. And I think we need a corporate liaisons officer, and I think we need to start looking about how we make this organization an international organization that can really have the impact. Because honestly, if you're not from Cambridge and you come here, this is what you think of. This should be our TED. This should have been TED 5 years ago. And there's so much more that we can do with that, and I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to create a position for that, if elected. Finally, I want to talk about speakers and debates. As Raza and Tim have said, I think this place is about the issues, and I think that we need to have an engaging debate where you think, wow, I didn't think of that, or wow, that's a really important issue, and you feel really electric. I want it to go to the bar, I want it to go to the pub, I want it maybe not to go to people's rooms, but you know, if it does, that's all the better for you guys. So, to sum up, I want an open union, and I want to be able to change your mind, and I want to be able to change everyone's mind, and everyone can feel like they become a member. So if you agree with that, and if you think that's a good idea, please vote for me on Monday. Thank you.
Any questions for Casey? Albert?
Is it the same question?
Yes, it is the same question. You know what it is.
So the question is effectively, how would you work with the team, and how would you make it work? And the best evidence I can give you is, I'm not going to hide the fact, and I think people are running with other people in this election. I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm running with Tim, Raza, and Ravi, and we have a shared vision about what we want to do. And I think that's been very clear over these hustings. But Raza's a guy that I ran against for treasurer in a very heated debate, and we weren't the best of friends at the time. The president that I served under nominated Raza, and today we're standing here running for an election together. I don't have any problem with working with anyone after this election, and I don't think anyone here does. But I think it's testimony to the fact that we all desperately want to do these jobs, and we all want to do them well, and we're all here to do them well. And I think not having those irreversible personal relationships is something of a benefit, because I have those examples where I can work with people who I've previously worked against, and I can show that I can work with anyone. When Raza spoke, when I was convincing Raza to run for Speaker's Officer, the first thing that we said was, it doesn't matter that we run against each other. It doesn't matter any of those kind of things. We're working together now because we have an idea of what we want to do. And I think everyone here has really good ideas of what they want to do. And I would be happy to work with anyone. And I think I've shown that by working in the union before and by what I'm saying here today.
Any more questions for Casey? Richard?
If you don't get elected, will you continue to work for the union, or will you do as some other unsuccessful candidates have done and walk away?
I'm going into my third year, so at this point, in terms of running for an elect position, it would only be for Easter term. But if someone turned around to me and created a corporate liaisons officer, if there was some way that I could help, I would love to. I've been helping with Michael, I've been helping with Daniel and their treasurer work for the last 2 years. In fact, the first thing when Michael got elected was I met him in London. I said, look, this is how I think you should do the treasury. It's your position to do it, but I think I have a good understanding of how to do it. And I've come back. I haven't been working for the union for the last term and a half because I've been doing other things, because for two reasons, really. One, I wanted to get a bit of experience outside of this space. And two, I think you really need to know when you want to do something. And I think there's a sense of entitlement in the union that is somewhat unfortunate. I did this, so I'm going to run for an elect position, so I'm going to run for this, and then I'm going to run for president. And I don't think that's a good way to do it. I think you should really want to do it, and I think I really want to do it. And I think I would love to help out the union in any way possible. And I think I've taken that time out to think about what I want to do and whether I'm the right person to do it. And I hope that I am, and I hope that you'll vote for me on Monday for that.
One more question for Casey. If there is one. Which there isn't. Right. Thank you, Casey.
Pleasure.
So it only remains for me to explain very briefly the voting procedures in this election. Voting will be open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Monday, that is Monday the 17th of June, this coming Monday. You can vote either here in the office, so you can come in and deposit your ballot in the ballot box. Ballots will be handed out on arrival. Alternatively, you can vote online, www.cus.org. There will be an elections page up there. If you are unsure as to how to vote online because you've forgotten your CUS username or your password, then please email development@cus.org. Development@cus.org, and Sam Haskell, our IT man, will sort it all out for you, hopefully. Okay, there's only one final announcement to make, which is that there are appointed positions available for Michaelmas 2013. These positions are currently open. If you are interested in getting more involved, it's certainly a great way to do it. Please do consider submitting an application. Would you like to say anything about that, Joanna?
Okay. So yeah, as all the candidates have probably persuaded you, the union is a great organisation to get involved with, and if you'd prefer not to run for election, if you want to try your hand at something other than the tasks that have been advertised to you today, applications for appointed positions are open, and as Michael said, will close on Tuesday. Press and publicity, head of events management, so overseeing all the stewards in the yellow jackets, head of AV, which has been spoken about already. Women's and diversity. So diversity is the position that I started out in, which are both sort of longer term roles, and guest liaison officer. So a managerial side, looking after many guest liaison officers on the night, and also bringing the speakers from the station, entertaining them while they're in Cambridge, and sort of giving them a good time. I think that's a sort of brief summary of everything on offer, and I hope that lots of you will choose to apply. Thanks.
Well, thank you to all of you for sitting through what I am reliably informed is the longest union hustings on record. It's very generous of you to give up your time. I hope you enjoy Lisa Kudrow. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.